Morning, everybody, and welcome to Mortgage Coach Tuesday interview. This is Dave Savage, CEO of Mortgage Coach. Love Tuesday at 9 o'clock because I'm always interviewing amazing leaders. Sometimes it's an author, sometimes it's a top loan officer. Today, I'm interviewing two leaders. I've got a good personal friend of mine and a superstar in the mortgage space, Mr. Jim McQuaig. Jim, welcome to the call today, brother.
Thanks, buddy. Good to be here.
Good. Well, this is not our first rodeo together, but it has been a long time, so I'm looking forward to bringing some value, helping branch managers, team leaders, anybody that is leading loan officers. We're going to help you execute better as both a mortgage coach leader, but any type of technology or process that you're trying to drive. Hopefully you'll get some value from that today. Also, we have Mr. Joe Arroyo. This is the first time I've interviewed Joe. I did get to have coffee with him at Sales Mastery, spent some time, and I think Joe is going to bring a huge layer of value to the mortgage coach community. So Joe, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Right on. So what I want to do before we get into your topic, I want to do a bit of a debrief on the call I did with Anthony last week. Anthony's book is one of the top-selling sales books trending right now on Amazon. By the way, I want to thank everybody who's on. Well, you may not have been on last week's call, but we sold over 50 individual books last week. So obviously you guys liked what Anthony had to say. It is a fantastic book. I mean, I think it's going to be one of those sales books that is around for a decade. The thing that I think makes it so powerful is that Anthony did a great job of not just talking about skills, selling skills, which is pretty much all most sales books talk about is sales skills. He talked about mindset, he talked about psychology. And I mean, really, if you follow his podcast, which I do, some of it is like, it's basically for psychologists. I mean, he really gets into the psychology of being a salesperson, of winning. In that call, he talked a lot about the mindsets that really differentiate successful salespeople from those who struggle: self-discipline, competitiveness, resourcefulness. So he really got into the psychics of selling. And then, of course, you got to have skills. You got to know how to close. You got to know how to diagnose, especially if you want to be a trusted advisor. So super important call for every manager and leader. I mean, I think it fits into the category of just essential training for mortgage coach leaders. And it really got me thinking. Over the weekend, I couldn't stop thinking about the call. I listened to a few more of his podcasts, and I created a couple slides for you guys as we kick off today's call. So the first slide I created, which I think really differentiates every leader on this call, is we've gone beyond transactional, product-centric, and service-oriented. I mean, let's face it, in the mortgage industry, to be competitive in today's market, you just crush these core competitiveness. Now, I think the mortgage industry as a whole, 90% of the lenders compete in that area, and then some of them, really crush it when it comes to relationship. But I think relationship selling, especially in most of the, the retail branch model lenders, that's where everybody differentiates. We are all about relationships. And then where I think the biggest opportunity is to create a culture of trusted advisors. To me, that is the ultimate competitive differentiator, where you can create a culture of where your loan officers, they're doing the core, but they're trusted advisors. So I created a framework, and I've shared a similar framework, but I made some edits after that call. And here is the trusted advisor framework from a mortgage coach perspective. It's personalization, so that you are tailoring what you are, what really matters to the client, and you're connecting emotionally. So personalization, it's important you ask great questions, and then it's important that you provide advice. You're teaching them something they didn't already know, so that you're delivering true, tangible value. Again, that's what you guys all do as mortgage coaches. You deliver advice. And then the other key to this trusted advisor framework is leadership. Now, in Challenger sales model, which I've talked a lot about, they call that controlling the sales process. But in the context of today's call, I think leadership is what's right, leadership for execution. So the trusted advisor framework is personalization, advice, and leadership. And by the way, that is all wrapped with your values as an originator and your purpose as a mortgage professional. So it's one of the reasons why we've created this Mortgage Coach Values and Why worksheet. I released this last week in a couple calls that we did, and now we're releasing it to the whole Mortgage Coach community. So you could download this in the handout section of today's call. So in the GoToWebinar, there's a handout section. You can download this Mortgage Coach Values and Why worksheet because it's so important to really execute at the highest possible level. You're super clear on what your values are and what your purpose is as an originator. So guys, I think I went about a minute over. Don't worry, you guys still, the call is about you. I think, Jim, let's go first with you sharing your story as a mortgage coach leader. You've been on a little bit of a journey for a couple years now, but I know over the past year you've just taken it to a whole new level. So if you wouldn't mind sharing your story, what your focus has been, and then Joe will bring you in about 15 minutes and share your framework for execution.
Perfect.
Hey, sounds good. You know, Dave, I don't know that I've told you this before. You have a little bit of, I have you to thank a little bit for kind of being a catalyst for what we've done lately. And, you know, I came from being a producer to now I'm just a non-producing branch manager, and kind of in that phase after the meltdown that Joe kind of humorously calls that PTSD. You know, I was recovering from all the blows that I took during that period, and began to build this branch back. And really about 2 years ago, there was two things that happened that really sparked me. One is I heard a statistic that said that the average loan officer was 54 years old. That was one thing. I looked around my office and I said, yep, that's about right. And then the second thing is you visited our office, and you're such a good friend that and I thank you for this. You were very, very blunt with me and just basically said, dude, the morale in your office sucks. And I don't know if you remember that or not.
I do.
Yeah, and so both those things, you know, those were kind of things that kind of kicked me in the pants a little bit and said, you know, doggone it, I got to make some changes. And so I started on that process really a couple of years ago. The first thing I did was really totally tore down and revamped our operations platform, so we've got that going really well. And then I decided to start hiring loan officers from outside the industry and training them. I had become very frustrated with loan officers. You know, and any manager that's on this call is gonna amen when I say this, but you know, you bring on that loan officer that's doing 5 or 6 loans a month, and he thinks he's a superstar and he's God's gift to the mortgage industry, and you can't tell him anything he doesn't already know, and that's just frustrating and irritating, and I just didn't want to have any part of that. And one of the reasons that the morale was so bad is I had not recruited. I just kind of said, forget it. I don't want any more of that. Ultimately decided to start hiring from outside the industry, put together a big list of the colleges and universities within a 4-state area of where I live, posted jobs on their career boards, looked at a zillion resumes, and we began hiring people. And I didn't have much of a plan outside of that initially. Of that initial kind of 2 different classes of groups that I hired, I think I probably hired 10 people. I've got 4 of those left, so I wasn't very successful. Then earlier this year, I met Joe, and he started coaching and consulting with me on growing this branch. And that's when I really made a commitment to doing what was required to make this work with some really solid, I mean, down to the daily plan. We have a first 100-day program that Joe helped me put together, and we've got every single day of the first 100 days detailed. We have daily accountability. They turn in daily tally sheets of their activity. We have targets that we're shooting for. I have 4 group meetings, presently 4 group meetings a week with the entire group. There's 9 of them. and then I have 2 one-on-one meetings per week with all 9 of them. So it's a significant, and I think, to fast forward to the punchline, if you're a manager and you want to do something like this, and you've tried it and it hadn't worked, I would be surprised if the missing element is not very significant daily involvement on your part. It's a huge commitment, but it's been super rewarding. I've had a number of visitors come by the office recently, and the main thing that they remark is, wow, that was fun. It's great being in your office. The spirit is just awesome. There's a buzz, and so it's been very exciting. It's also been, this last month, which would have September, was actually the 2nd month that our most recent class closed loans. That would have been their 6th month in the business. So we started them earlier this year in April. They closed 53% of the production of my entire office. That was 52 loans for that group. So it's pretty exciting what they're able to do. And really, Joe was a big part of making that happen by helping me design a plan to do it and the accountability piece.
Love it. So let's break this down. So how many total loan officers in your branch?
16.
How many total loans did you close last month?
Last month, 124.
And so, I mean, first of all, that is, by all measures in the industry, that is a great per loan officer closing rate. And when we think of some of the new loan officers, that we're talking about loan officers who have been in the business for less than a year, and many of them that have been in the business for less than 2 years, how many loans are they closing per month?
Yeah, so the group of 9, which are the new group, 5 of them are 6 months in last month, and the other 4 are anywhere from a year to almost 2 years. And that group closed 52 loans. Those 9 guys.
Wow. So,
but you got to think, 5 of them, it was their 2nd month closing loans. I mean, they hadn't even, 3 months prior they didn't close any. So I mean, they're ramping up fairly quickly.
So super powerful. So first of all, I want everybody who's listening to this call, some of you have an ambition to scale, and the idea of bringing in loan officers from outside the industry, whether they're new or whether they just don't have experience, is very attractive. And some of you, that's just not your model, not interested in doing it. But I think what you're going to take away from this, whether that's not your goal, bring in new loan officers, or it's just to fine-tune how you execute based off of the team and the strategy you have, you're going to get a lot of takeaways. And Jim, I know the other thing that makes you special is you get a lot of adoption of Mortgage Coach. So if you could just kind of speak to why you think you have better adoption of, your loan officers delivering a total cost analysis versus, others.
Well, one of the things is, I mentioned the first 100 days, and really, first 100 days, it's a little bit misleading. What we're really training to is a standard of kind of a productivity standard. That standard, we call it 5-2-1. And so what we're looking for, we measure on a daily basis. We want 5 voice-to-voice connects with customers, 2 Mortgage Coach Edge Live presentations, and we push Edge Live. We don't go any other way. And that should be made with all decision makers, so husband and wife, whatever the case may be. And then that should lead to 1 loan application. So 5-2-1. And so each day, that's what we're focused on. And the key to that whole thing, obviously, getting the loan application is what makes you money ultimately when that loan closes. But the real key that we're focused on is the Edge Live presentation. And so each day, each evening, I get what we call a tally sheet that tells me each one of them fills out what they did for the day, and I'm tracking that on a daily basis. So once we get that all accumulated at the end of the week, on Monday, after our morning huddle, on Monday I meet individually with each one of them and go over their tally sheets for the previous week and what they averaged on a daily basis, the target being the 5-2-1. So So Mortgage Coach for us that is just key. We began teaching that in our first 100-day program. We begin having them watch Mortgage Coach videos in week 4. So they start in the mortgage business. They don't know there's a T in mortgage, and on week 4 they're watching all the, probably 10 or 15 of the training videos that you have on the website, beginning to learn Mortgage Coach. In week 5, we begin providing them case studies, scenarios, and they develop Mortgage Coach TCAs that we then review. We continue to do that for, I don't know, 10 or 12 weeks. Ultimately, what we have them doing is doing Edge Live presentations on kind of our scenarios that we've made up, and they're doing those presentations to other branch managers within our company in other cities. And I actually even had, one week I had them do a branch manager for another company in another city. And so we really train them on Mortgage Coach up front. And you talk about why is that? Clearly, Mortgage Coach provides value to the customer. It also gives, it differentiates you obviously from the competition. But what we've really found, and what's kind of opened my eyes to the value of Mortgage Coach, is as these young bucks are in there using it, they're learning so much about all the different levers, the drivers of what provides value to the customer, how managing a mortgage properly can really provide value to a family. You can actually see that when you're digging into those numbers and doing all the different scenarios. It's kind of hard to do that when you're just putting together a fee worksheet. You just don't see all that stuff. So it's been key for us in getting these guys up to speed.
Love it, love it. Well, hey, let's transition to Joe. Before I do that, I did just put a link in the GoToWebinar chat for how to use Mortgage Coach Live to deliver a total cost analysis experience. So I went to our YouTube page. By the way, super easy. I am on our YouTube page. I typed in search live, and boom, how to create a Mortgage Coach Live experience. So that has been shared, FYI on that. So let's transition to Joe. Joe, obviously I was impressed with some of the conversations you and I have had, but I know you helped, Jim, you've helped others. You can tell a little bit about your backstory, and then I will share the screen, and I know you have some slides that you want to walk us through to help us, better understand your methods of execution.
Perfect. Let me get this set up so we can see it. Great. So yeah, a little bit of backstory. I've been in the industry for 16 years, starting first in real estate brokerage. Sold a little over 1,600 homes in 5 years, primarily new construction and investment. Got into investment property in a big way, in a stupid way, over-leveraged myself, and just went bust over a slow, painful 18 months. From 08 to 09, in the middle of 09, in the heat of the meltdown, I had the brilliant idea of earning much-needed cash flow by becoming a loan officer. Even though I had no idea, I figured, hey, I've sold homes, I've done development, I can do some loans. Got in there, destroyed just about every realtor relationship and friendship I had developed over the past 8 years by cutting my teeth on them, unfortunately, and had to go through the hard work of going back and building from scratch, making 100 connects a week, week after week, to build agent referral business, until finally, after doing that and really getting into that consistent process, in a 3-month period, we built origination volume that most people don't get to in 20 years of origination, and we were able to grow and build from there. But what that really ignited was just a passion to teach and to share and consult with others, and so we launched that 5 years ago, and we've been doing it full-time now for 3 years, and that's what we love to do. Work is sacred. We love to connect with people and help them do sacred work, put their visions into reality. So the best way we're able to do that, we started with originator, production, sales scripts, that type of thing. That's great. I love that. There's so much good content out there in that arena. What we found was our real sweet spot was in the area of building and developing teams, because great visions typically require you to have a team around you, to make happen. So that's our area of expertise. We've used it to build everywhere from Keller Williams has used this system to build from 12,000 agents to the largest real estate brokerage in the United States now, a little over 150,000. We've used it all the way down to two-man or two-person, but very profitable operations. So what I'll share with you here is kind of some key core grounding concepts that if you have any ambition of growing a team culture where there's accountability and execution, you're actually implementing, then these are some key grounding concepts and thought processes I'd want you to be aware of. Sound good?
Love it. Looking forward to going through the concepts. And by the way, so you helped Keller Williams come in and build the kind of success they've had, because I think everybody in our space is aware of just what an amazing success story that is. But you've been a part to that story?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And our mentors were Brett and Bain Hennion, who were Gary Keller's original coaches. So they're my direct coach and mentor. We're in business together. And so the process we're using here was the integral foundational process that built Keller Williams from a strong seed into what it is now.
Wow. Well, I am looking forward to seeing the playbook. Let's roll.
Yeah. So that said, we have to put a frame on this for our discussion. And so the frame I'd like to look at this from today is if you're an originator and you're bumping up against that level of 8 to 10, or you have gusts, more likely gusts, where you're bumping up against that 8 to 10 level, you just can't quite get past that consistently. You'll have 1 or 2 months at 8 to 10 units, and you see in sights, you have the talent, you have the ambition, you see in your sights the ability to break through and get to some of those numbers of 15, 20, 25 units a month, being a $100 million producer, and you just keep hitting up against that ceiling. So that's the kind of framework to look at this from. And when you think about this, when you're wanting to build a team that allows you to break through that 8 to 10 barrier to the 20 to 25, you want a team that does two things. You want a team that delivers a great client experience, that you're proud of. So you want this thing that you get to say, hey, I'm really proud of this. And it also happens to generate referrals. It's systematically generating referrals. And two, you want your team to help you create systems that allow you to stay in dollar productive activities. And I misspelled there. Ideally, dollar productive activities that are in your zone of genius. So if you've ever seen Tim Brahim's work on that, zone of genius, high return on investment, high return on energy, your activities that allow you to stay squarely in that squadron, earn you a ton of money, and they give you life back. They don't suck the life away from you. So if you can build a team that does those two things, would you guys agree we've built a team that most teams are looking for, who are trying to break through to that production level?
Absolutely. And by the way, folks, I've interviewed Tim Brahim, I don't know, probably dozens of times, and we actually did a call called The Genius Zone by Tim Brahim, where the call was just dedicated to that, and I just posted a link to that. But his work on the Genius Zone is so powerful.
It's phenomenal. So Tim was a coach of mine, and I couldn't speak more highly of what he has to offer. So let's see here. So when you're thinking about building a team that accomplishes those two, that accomplishes delivering a great client experience and generates referrals, creates systems that allow you to stay in dollar productive activities, and your goal is to get to, let's say, 20, 25 units a month. The question is, can you do it alone? Is that even possible?
No.
Thank you. I am asking you.
I don't know if you're waiting for an answer.
I am, yeah. So typically when I ask a question, I try not to answer it myself. So, so yeah, I mean, think about this. If you want to do 15 units a month consistently, deliver a great client experience and stay in dollar productive activities, could you do it alone?
No.
And just to add on to that, absolutely not.
Yeah. When you think about getting to space, even doing 8 to 10 units a month, depending on what market you're in, unless you're in just kind of a turn and burn mode, can you even do 8 to 10 units a month consistently alone?
No.
Well, let me jump in here. Let me jump here because, by the way, no, especially have a quality of life, and it varies from market to market. I always kind of consider getting north of 5 loans a month is like, okay, you're a career loan officer. You're closing 8+ loans a month consistently. You're a top producer. But it is a ceiling of complexity, and in most models, it's kind of like to get over 8 and do it consistently, you need team. And I don't know about you, Joe, but I've kind of, the theme I've seen for every 8 per month, it's kind of like add another team member to it. So 21 loans.
Exactly.
3-ish.
Hold on.
3-ish.
I'll watch
3-ish leaders. Can you hear? Anyways, you can keep going, Joe, if you're not hearing me.
Hey, guys, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hello?
Hey, Joe, we hear you, Joe. Keep talking.
Oh, okay. All right, great. Thank you. So, you cannot accomplish that alone consistently. If you are in that 8 to 10 space and you're staying there consistently, you're probably recognizing that this has become the ceiling for you. And this is a key decision. Why am I driving that home? Because this is a key point to understand, that if you really hold a vision to break through to a higher level, if you have that in your gut, if that's something you can and want to achieve, there is no way through except to build a team. There's no way through to build the business you really want except to build a solid team around you. And that's, man, to me, that's a big aha. I've got to decide and get really clear on what I need to get to my goal, or decide that that's not really my goal and stop talking about it, right? If I'm going to hit it, I've got to decide. I've got to decide, who am I? Am I going to be an organizational leader, or am I going to be entrepreneurial? Most of us got into this business, we were entrepreneurial, and that's phenomenal. We're risk takers, we work for ourselves. Besides the peripheral team of processing and operations, we've our branch manager and so on, then primarily we answer to ourselves. The switch to build a killer team, one that operates at that kind of high consistent level, is you become an organizational leader. And the difference is that this is someone who's willing to hold others accountable in their personal and professional growth, and willing to be accountable themselves, particularly to the team they're building. And if you wake up one morning and you decide, hey, I want to be entrepreneurial this morning, and you wake up the next morning and you're like, no, I'm going to be a team, build a team, boy, you're entering into Death Valley. You're entering into really difficult space. And this is an easy space to operate in. So one morning, I recognize I need a team. I wake up, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go hire this person. Well, I'm really into that for about 3 or 4 days. On Friday morning, I wake up, and I don't feel like having someone else to deal with today. I just want to do my own thing and do my own work and act entrepreneurial as I always have, and then not give them the tools and resources and attention they need to really win. And then I toggle back and forth. Tuesday of the following week, I'm organizational again, and I'm wondering why the heck my assistant isn't doing what I need them to do. Until, of course, I wake up again on Wednesday morning, an entrepreneur. Have you guys ever felt that before?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And so here's this thing, like, it's really important we embrace that and say, you know what, there is this entrepreneurial vein in us, we honor that, and yet if we're going to step into this team space, man, there are things in the entrepreneur that we have to grow out of. And again, that's a key decision. A key decision point is us getting really clear on who we're going to show up as, who we're going to be. So the issue is that as soon as we start to get into clear discussion or clear idea about, you know, I'm going to go organizational, I want to build a team, then we get into this problem zone of, man, you know, I've tried to do it before, I've hired someone, it was a big mess, cost me $5,000 for the month, and then I had to fire them, which was, you know, totally a terrible experience. Or worse, I kept the person on for 6 months, they cried every day on their way to work, and I kept losing money and hemorrhaging it. And so we get to this point where we're like, all right, I know I want to build a team. I've done it before. It hasn't worked, or I've seen other people do it before. And there's this like really sobering moment. And there should be. We should have a sobering moment, because if you look at this slide here, you look at what we're showing, the stake. And when you think about building a team and creating this culture of accountability and execution through a team, you got to look at the tangible and intangible costs of bringing in someone who is a bad hire or poorly trained for their position. So, I mean, just looking at these, Jim, running it through your head briefly, what would you say is the cost of a bad hire for you when you're looking at those categories over the period of, you know, half a year to a year?
Yeah, if it's one of these loan officers, it's going to be, because I'm really in tune with this because I just went through it. I'd say in the 40 to 60,000 range for that first 6 months. Probably maybe a hair more, maybe as high as 80.
What's
for just one LO bad hire?
Well, it's a lot, and I think what's interesting about what Jim did is, I mean, there's not only a cost that you invest, you know, there's an opportunity that you miss, and so I would challenge everybody, when you really think about this, it's a lot more than you realize. So I don't have specific numbers. I think what Jim said makes a lot of sense, and I would just ask everybody on this call, in your model, whether you're an individual loan officer with an assistant, what's the cost? If you're a branch manager, and remember, just because someone's hitting your minimum standards of 3 loans or 5 loans, you know what? That doesn't mean they made it. That doesn't mean you are achieving the goals you want as a branch manager, because in Jim's case, his goals were, you know, 8+ loans per loan officer. And when he brings on teams, you know, his goals go from 8 to 20. So start looking at, you know, you've only got so many seats. You've only got so far you can spread yourself as a leader. What is the cost of bringing in someone that's not going to achieve your goals? It is a lot. So everybody in this call, figure out what it is for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll send you this slide if you want it as well. And when you really calculate in loss of goodwill, loss of clients, your time invested, the fact that you didn't apply those resources to someone who is talent, and the loss in your ability to create a culture of accountability and execution, the costs are way, I mean, they're astronomical. They're through the roof. $500,000+ is the typical result we get to when taking time. So here's the good news. So that's sobering. You know, we need to take that into consideration. The good news is, when you're thinking about building a team of even doing 15 to 25 units, how many killer hires or talented team members do you really need? For you as an LO, if you're building an LO support system, we've found you typically, and to go to your number, Dave, we found typically you need 2 to 3 people. 2 to 3 really talented team members will completely change your world, will completely change what's possible for you, for your ability to execute on this vision, and to, you know, not just make it, but to make it at a really high level. 2 to 3. So there's a lot of risk in building a team. There's a lot of commitment to it. But when you really think about it, 2 to 3 is what you need. You can do that. You can learn to become an awesome leader, to create a really killer culture for 2 to 3 people who are just a perfect match for you. So again, it's important to look at that and say, okay, man, if I'm going to get to this thing, I've got to decide. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a team leader. I'm going to go organizational in my leadership and not show up as an entrepreneurial and flip-flop day in, day out. I'm going to be sober about the cost and investment I'm making here, not just tangible but intangible, and the cost of the person's life that I'm bringing in and the impact I'm going to have on them, and then realize that I only need 2 or 3. And so the assumption when we're looking at creating talent culture, and Jim, you'll remember you and I went through this at the beginning probably several times over, because it's a foundational understanding to building a team that operates. Killer talent is essential to culture, and talent is assumed. If you're building a team culture of accountability and execution, and you can't say that my team is between an 8 and a 10 out of 10, 10 being world-class, the best it can be done, if you're not absolutely sure that they're at an 8 or above, forget about creating a culture and putting in systems for accountability and execution, because you do not yet have the capacity to produce that. So I hope that hits. And so it's an investment. It's an investment of your time. There's no magic pill. You can't just go out and pull someone else's, McDonald's manual and put it into place. It's an investment, and that investment is well worth it, because what it allows you to do. So if you're looking at building talent being assumed, just recognize, we're not going to go into this right now, but just recognize that there is a process to it. If you want to make sure you have talent and you screened out crazy, there is a systematic way you can approach this, starting from knowing what your needs and goals are, to making sure you have standards and a behavioral job match, to going through a systematic selection process that really helps you screen out who's going to work for you and who's not going to work for you. So again, essential to have that at the beginning. But now that you have talent for your organization, for your team, then the question becomes, I've hired this person, I'm super excited about him, but is talent a given? So for performance, is performance a given? So think about that. Is performance a given if I've brought on talent?
No.
No. Why not?
Well, because you got to train them.
Yeah. You got to train them. Performance is not a given. Even you could bring in the highest level. Jim has a great ops director, Kareem. But if Jim didn't give her the tools to win, she wouldn't win. You could have the highest level team members come on who are of the utmost talent, and performance in your team is not a given. Of course, who do we usually blame in that circumstance? So what we found is that, yeah, exactly. We typically blame them. So what we found is there's really 16. We've cut this down to 7 here. There's these key performance stoppers that keep talent on your team, whether that be you or anyone else, from performing at a really high level. And if you look at this list of 7, think, what of these could I not say I have at a 9 or a 10, 10 being the best they can be done? What of these really stand out as pain points right now? And if I'm a solo producer even, what stands out as a pain point for me understanding my own job and how I'm operating? So, no or poorly defined job description, no defined expectations with no accountability or follow-up to those expectations, poor behavioral job match or poor ability for that person to apply their real skills in the job, little effective training, no goals, poor focus on priorities, no follow-up or accountability, focus on what's wrong or not working.
Hey, Joe, real quick, jump in.
Yes, sir.
When I read through that and I think about what we have going on, I know in the past I would read through that and go guilty, 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 and feel really guilty the whole. I'm reading through that and I'm just getting like happy, 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 because it's like, man, we're doing that. We're doing not perfectly. I mean, nothing's perfect, but we've got this in place that we're hitting on all those. It's really exciting.
And that hits a key point, Jim, because I think you could look at this and get this feeling like, well, that's just the way it is. This is how it'll always be. That's just the way it is. And that's not true. It doesn't need to be this way. The opposite of this can and should be true if we're taking the responsibility to build a team. And it must be true if we want to create a team culture of accountability and execution.
Hey,
so if you sum those up,
real quick, if you could go back and if I am getting ahead, I'm sorry, but I just saw, the concept of accountability. There's a lot of, every branch manager that's in the Mortgage Coach Network, they want their loan officers to do a total cost analysis. And by the way, 10 a week, 2 a day is a pretty common metric of excellence. I all the time when I talk to top loan officers, and I know how many total cost analysis they do per month, and I just know that if you're doing 40 a month, you're going to crush it. But let's face it, the loan officers aren't doing it. So Jim, real quick, how do you have a kind of graceful accountability around this metric without browbeating people? Or by the way, maybe you are. Maybe you're just beating people up. They're afraid to come in your office, and if they didn't hit their 2 TCAs, it's just, it's like, sergeant gunnery. But if you could just, what is the accountability? How are you creating accountability just so we know? And I want to know around the total cost, that 2 a day. What's it sound like?
Yeah, so Dave, I was a Navy pilot, so there's a fair amount of, one of the things with these new guys that I did, and this is something I didn't do with the previous 2 classes that I brought in, that I did with this final class, and this is going to sound really military, and I guess maybe it is, but it's sort of like athletic and military. I had an initial meeting with them, the first meeting I had, like the kickoff meeting. It was somewhat, if you ever saw the movie Patton at the beginning, when he's in front of the American flag having that speech, I kind of had a Patton speech with him. And so I went through initially, so I established the ground rules at the beginning of the relationship, and I think that was really key, because if I then go back and I say, I'm requiring these things from you, and I haven't let them know up front, then I'm kind of a jerk. I'm changing the rules. And so I let them know up front, hey, we're having these meetings. 10 minutes early is on time is late. Stuff like that. Just things that you can't just take for granted. People know. So establish the ground rules that whatever we're requiring to do, it's for your own good, and it's a requirement for you to maintain your job. Number 2, I actually structured their compensation, and I think this is important as well, where they make a salary plus commissions. So when someone's paying your salary, I pretty much believe I have the right to tell you what to do to a certain extent. And so so I think those 2 things help set the stage for it. And then you can't just tell someone. It's that whole thing about, your wife says, oh, you never tell me you love me. Oh, well, I told you when we met, so you got to tell them every day. So that's the point. So repetition, just continuing to go over it. And also, one of the nice things is mortgage coach has to do it. So you end up initially having them doing TCAs, then doing videos, then doing Edge Live, and now the thing that we added about 3 weeks ago is we have them do the Edge Live, but now we're requiring after the Edge Live that they do a quick video and send it to the customer, just a recap video, because most of our business is done over the phone, not in person. So put a face with a name, that kind of thing. Be pleasant and reiterate what the next step is to them. And it should be a 1-minute video, just bam, bam, real quick. And so that we've instituted that 3 weeks ago to have them start doing that. So there's always something new to add that provides a richness to the experience, I think, and just constantly talking about it, and that's all I've been able to find.
Yeah. So couple things, folks. The takeaway for everybody on the call, it's setting expectation around requirement and the daily and weekly follow-up. I can't remember, I think it was Jocko, I interviewed Jocko Willink a month or 2 ago, and, a Navy SEAL commander, he actually, after his active duty and, leading a very distinguished group, he was the head of SEAL training for the entire West Coast, and he had a great quote. I can't remember it, but it was like, whatever you tolerate, and I can't remember it eloquently, but whatever you tolerate is what you get. And so I think for everyone that's trying to manage that standard, if you're tolerating something less than that, you're gonna get it. Now, hey, I know we've got about 15 minutes left, and by the way, Joe, I know you've got a few more slides. I did notice we got joined by Matt Clark, who is the COO of Churchill, and Matt manages, he's the leader, head of production, CEO of the company, manages a lot of different branches. And one of the things that brought this story to life was Matt just telling me, what an amazing success story this has been among, a lot of different branches. Matt, are you on the call right now? Are you unmuted?
I'm on the call, Dave. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, brother.
Awesome.
So a couple things real quick. So, I mean, I know what Jim has done over the past year has been pretty impressive just from, out of a lot of different branches. If you could, one, speak to then just, this story better than I do, and what we're trying to accomplish here at Mortgage Coach, if you could put some color and what would be the takeaway for folks. So one, a little bit about how successful they are, and two, a big takeaway from you.
Oh, sure. No. Watching what Jim has done with his team by implementing not just ideas, but proven strategies, and then enhancing them and putting in the disciplines to move forward, and bringing in new people under a completely new way of bringing in new people that are brand new to the industry, and seeing the volume of Jim's production that are coming from these new folks has been energizing to us corporately, but also to the rest of the team that's there. The positive energy that's created when you start going through a process like this with high levels of accountability, high levels of discipline, but also high levels of energy and expectation, the entire tide rises, and it's been awesome to watch those results. I'll say a key takeaway is too often we find ourselves trying to outsmart good ideas, and if we were just humble enough to find an example of a good process and a good idea that has proven success and just adopt it versus trying to jigger it for our own good, if you just adopt and do the things that work until you have the level of success that has already been proven, you'll find yourself thrilled. One of those things is, Dave, not to be a Mortgage Coach commercial, but it amazes me how a lot of experienced loan officers I've seen who are hesitant to change their game to using Mortgage Coach, specifically in my mind in Edge Live. And if using Edge Live has helped brand new people into the industry generate 5, 6, 10, 15 loans a month after several months of training, imagine what it could do to experienced people if they can lay on experience with that tool and just commit to doing something that works. That would be a key takeaway for me.
Love it, Matt. So stay on the call. We've got about another 12 minutes, maybe another opportunity to ask a question here in the last few minutes of the call. And again, folks, we've talked about Mortgage Coach Live, also known as Edge Live. I put a video on how to do that. Also, every Thursday, we do training. So this Thursday, we'll make sure how to drive a live experience is part of our Thursday at 9 o'clock Pacific training. And then also on our Wednesday mobile training, which is tomorrow at 11 o'clock Pacific, and we'll put a link to that in the GoToWebinar control panel, we teach you how to drive that live experience from your mobile device. So I'm hearing all the time loan officers are, families out at an open house, it's on the weekend, whether you're in front of a desktop, you can update the numbers and you can have a live experience. I am not kidding you. I can't remember who it was, but I interviewed a loan officer a few weeks ago that was on a bike ride on a weekend, and he stopped, to get some water, check his email. Client needed some help. Literally, within 2 minutes, had a live experience with his mobile phone. Completely wowed the customer. Completely wowed the realtor. So it's a super powerful strategy. So we are in the last 10 minutes, Joe. I know you got a few more slides. Why don't you keep it rocking?
Sweet. Yeah, so these are the common ones. We can put them down into two primary performance stoppers. And that's A, they're not behaviorally matched for the job, they're not talent for their role, or B, they're not effectively trained to do their jobs. So here's a key takeaway. The first one is you make the decision of am I going to go organizational or entrepreneurial here? Two, once you've done that, you've got to bring in talent. If you want a culture of accountability and execution, you've got to have killer talent and a process to bring that talent in. And then three, once that talent's there, they have to be effectively trained to do their jobs. And that is the part where if you have talent, it's easy to get really, really hung up. So I'll give you a brief exercise to do on this that will actually be far more powerful than making it really complicated. And that's for you to give clarity on the job and effectively train someone. First, you have to have a good picture of what's the entirety of what the perfect loan process, for Tim's verbiage, what the perfect loan process looks like for you and your team. If you have a client experience that generates referrals, if you have system to stay in dollar productive activities, what are the major job functions that you do, as an originator from start to finish? And what are those major job functions, the key attitudes, beliefs, skills, knowledge you need to have, the schedule you need to operate in order to produce 15, 20, 25 units a month, if that's your objective. So you list those job functions, and there's 1 through 10 listed here, and they're big job functions, like being able to take in an incoming phone call and convert it to an app, take a solid 1003, those types of things. And then take one job function at a time. So after you've said, hey, all right, here are all the job functions, take one at a time and break it out into what are the key tasks that make that job function happen, right? So if it's taking an incoming call, that incoming initial lead call, what are the key tasks that make taking an incoming lead call happen at a really high level client experience? And what are the key attitudes I want someone to have? That it's a welcoming call and not a sales call. I really want them to feel valued and to feel they found the place that they're going to use. What are the key skills I need to know how to have in order to draw them into the application process? What's the knowledge that I need to have to be able to share with them on that initial call to get them to come in and bring all their documents and make full application? And so detail out what those key tasks are to be done at the highest level. What does it look like to do it at a 10? Detail those out, and then ask yourself, great, of all of these key major job functions and all of these key tasks, what do I own? What are mine? And what are the job functions and key tasks of my team, of the people who I bring on to support me? So you're pulling now from a holistic picture of what your major job functions are for your perfect loan process, right? It's a holistic picture. And that question is very powerful. If I'm going to stay in dollar productive activities, what's mine? What do I need to train out? And then over a period of 100 days, Dave, when we're designing this, when someone's gone through that exercise and they say, okay, at the end of 100 days, our question is, if you're bringing this person on, this new loan partner, loan assistant, and you're telling me at the end of 100 days that this person's a wild success for you, they're doing a great job, they're doing the job you hired them for, what are the things they're doing? What are the things that they've taken off your plate out of these job functions and key tasks? What have they mastered at the end of that 100 days? And when you view it from that framework, it tends to get pretty easy to begin to chunk down, okay, well, here are the things they would need to do. So in Jim's case, we just had to say, for them to get to 521, what were the job functions, the key job functions and tasks they would have to know and master to be able to do that? Then we take it over a 100-day chart and we say, okay, let's put that then and chunk it into milestones that allow us to grow. So if you see what this chart's doing here at the very beginning, when we bring someone on, we've got a high degree of management control. We're doing most of the work still. We're explaining. In fact, we're doing more work because we're explaining and sharing it. And there's low growth, low actual productivity from that person as they're growing. But how do you sequence it out over 100 days so that every single day they're taking 1% of that job, of their key job functions and tasks? And if you do nothing else but chart those two things over 100 days and then bring in to play weekly accountability sessions surrounding it where you say, hey, here's what the new plan is, here's what we expect you to do, and we'll give you the training on it. Get that person into action, measure that action, bring them back for a feedback session and evaluate the results, and choose how you're going to continue, stop, or modify training to move them along this continuum. You will be 99% ahead of the curve in developing a team culture of accountability and execution. So there's a great quote that we have that, success is determined 10% from clarity of your goals, 10% from specificity of your action plan, and 80% of accountability to your program. So, Dave, that's where most of this breaks down, is that idea of, man, I don't want to be the guy who's weekly holding people accountable. It's kind of got this negative connotation to it. So we have these 3 action training accountability tools we use. If you put them into play, it makes it super simple. You're actually building a relationship with the person. You're investing in them. You're not treating them like a McDonald's worker where you expect them just to, follow the footsteps and know what to do. You're really helping them learn what they need to learn to be able to execute their key job functions and tasks at the end of 100 days. And, we'd be happy to share what those accountability tools are with anyone who'd like them.
Well, I super appreciate that. Folks, to sign up and get those, we have made a link available in the GoToMeeting control panel. And Marcy, if you could post that again just so people do not miss that. Also, I'm going to show it on my screen here in just a second. So stay tuned. Let me know when you can see my screen. I'm pulling it back just to make sure everybody knows how to get some of these slides. Can you see my screen, by the way?
We got it. We got it, yeah.
So this is what it looks like, folks. That is what it looks like when you go to Joe's website. You'll notice where it says 3 tools to create a team culture of accountability. Sign up for that. Put what you've heard to work. So we're in the last 3 minutes, folks, and a couple folks said they came late. Do want to remind you, if you came late, that we did record it, but one person asked, what is 521? What is 521? And 521 is where Jim's goals that he's driving as a leader with his team are 5 quality conversations per day, 2 live mortgage coach sales experiences, and 1 app, which, by the way, I interviewed Jeremy Forcier a couple weeks ago, and he had his top 3 goals that he manages himself and he manages his team, which was prospecting, a certain amount of prospecting, a mortgage coach total cost analysis, and to be part of the celebrations along the customer experience. So he is part of the approval. He's got a team all around him. That's how he's doing 40+ loans a month. But, these are his 3 top things. So hey, Jim, we've got a couple questions that have come in. We only have time for one, and I want to really crush this one where someone was asking, you keep talking about Edge Live, and that is different than just giving a total cost analysis. Could you speak to what you think the conversion rate difference is? And really do it from 3 standpoints. One, without a mortgage coach versus a mortgage coach. And then when you start talking about this live experience, how much more is that improving conversion? That's a question that's come in a couple different times in a couple different ways.
Yeah, so without a mortgage coach, address that one first. I mean, it becomes so much more dependent on the sales. I mean, there's plenty of guys that are killing it sales-wise because they're good salespeople, good solid mortgage guys, and they do it without mortgage coach. And okay, that's fine. Why would you do that though? If you believe, and part of what we teach our people is act out of what you believe. If you believe that for most people in America, the mortgage is the #1 financial thing in their life, and that families kind of either succeed or don't succeed in many cases based on financial issues. Here we are placed in their lives with an opportunity to give them good advice about the biggest financial thing in their life. Why wouldn't you use a tool that made it really clear for them, that differentiates you from everyone else, and also that allows you to learn a lot more about the mortgage by virtue of using it. So why wouldn't you? It's just kind of, to me, a no-brainer. The live versus the other, just sending them like a PDF of the mortgage coach. That one of the things that we've done, and a couple little enhancements. What we were finding is when we would send it to them as a PDF, for instance, hard copy, it's essentially they think they got their answer, and so they don't have a need to talk with you any further. So what we really think the Edge Live provides a much better opportunity. Yes, for you to get the sale, that's a selfish reason, but also for you to actually pass to them information that's actually legitimate. When they're just looking at those numbers, they may or may not be seeing what's really the deal. And so when you do an Edge Live, you have an opportunity to expose in a way that you can control. And so what we do, we actually send out a link ahead of time, but when they get to the link, all it has in there is their current mortgage. For instance, if it's a refinance, it would just have their current mortgage. During the Edge Live presentation, our guys then bring out the next option, and you guys have a training on how to do that. It's very cool to do it that way, and you control the entire progress of the discussion. And so I haven't done any examples because we pretty much came out of the chute saying we got to do Edge Live from day one on this. I know that in the old days when I produced and I just sent a PDF, it didn't work near as well as what these guys are doing.
So let's do this because we are past the hour. Jim, first of all, you are invited, or someone on your team is invited to our Thursday call at 9. Again, you're not obligated, but we're going to cover how to do Edge Live. If you or someone on your team can come to that call, Jim, it'd be great to just be able to ask some questions, because there's obviously a technical part of that, and then there's obviously a kind of a sales skill part of that. So just know that you or whoever you want to designate from your team, if you could come to our 9 o'clock this Thursday call, great. And by the way, if you can't, don't feel obligated. But heads up, guys, we will focus on that training this Thursday. I do want to make sure folks, go deep with Joe. Request these tools. Please let me know what value you got from today's call. Would love to know what you thought of today's call on a scale of, wow, we surpassed your expectations, good, you got some base hits. If you are a guest to this call and you want to learn more about Mortgage Coach, click the last option and we'll schedule a demo. Next week's call, I'm going to have my good friend Bob Bodine. Bob Bodine is just an amazing story. I mean, he's one of the country's most powerful men in sports that you've never heard of. I mean, this guy has placed the guy who leads the Olympics, the commissioner of baseball, some of the most prolific coaches and leaders in the back room of athletics, whether it's pro sports, college sports, and he's a good friend. So don't miss next week's call. He's the author of The Power of Who, and we're just going to talk about, the power of who, how to get more referrals, how to do life with your friends, and so it should be a super great call. So have a great day, everybody. Have a great week. Joe, any last words of wisdom as we wrap up today's call?
No, just I love and appreciate you guys. You are all awesome at what you do. So thank you for letting me spend some time with you.
Super appreciate it. And again, folks, sign up for Joe's information. And Joe, I look forward to having you back on a Mortgage Coach call to continue to drive accountability and execution. I'm looking forward to the next one we do together.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Dave.